Grüß euch and welcome to this new video.
In this video we will show you how to improve your photography. 3 camera settings you should understand. Let's start first with the intro. Let's talk about the 3 settings. First, we have aperture. What is aperture? Aperture is a hole in the lens where the light travels through it onto the sensor. Think about your eye. Your eye has a pupil and the aperture is like the pupil of your eye. The more light you need to see things in dark conditions, the wider the pupil is open. So that's the same with the aperture. If you need more light, you open the aperture. So you have a setting on your camera which controls your aperture. So open the aperture technically means it is surrounded by lamellas, and if you choose a specific setting, the lamellas open or close the hole, so you can change for darker or brighter environments. To understand how to set your camera aperture, the setting means you can say the length of your lamellas. If the lamellas are longer, you need a higher number. If the lamellas are shorter, so the hole is wider open, you need a shorter amount of the setting. So if you choose, for example, an aperture of 1.4, it means it is very short, the lamellas are very short and the hole is very big. If you choose, for example, 8 or 11 or more, the lamellas are very long and the hole is very close. It's like if it's too bright outside and your pupil is wide open and it's too exposed for your eye, you have to close your eyes a little bit so not so much light is going through your pupil. And that's the same with the camera. You can do 2 things with aperture setting. First is you can handle brighter or darker environments. So if your environment is too dark, you can open the aperture to get more light. But the second effect takes also place. The wider your aperture is and the more light goes through your lens, the more light goes onto the sensor. That means if you want to focus on a specific object and you open your aperture too wide, too much light around the object is coming through the lens and so you have too much background blur. So with aperture you can choose the right amount of background blur. It's also called bokeh. The second setting is shutter speed. What does shutter speed mean? Imagine a curtain moving in front of your sensor. The curtain is closed when you don't take a photo. So if you trigger the camera to take a photo, the curtain opens, the light travels through it and the sensor is collecting all the information of the photons which travels onto it. When the curtain closes, after a specific amount of time, no light is going through the lens and so the sensor cannot collect more data. What can you do with shutter speed setting? The first thing is you can handle motion. What does it mean? So if you want to capture fast moving objects like bees, birds or some fast cars and you want to freeze the image, you need a high number of shutter speed. That means it's only that number as part from the second. So if you choose, for example, 250, does not mean 250 seconds. It means a fourth of a second. If you choose maybe 8 and you have these 2 lines up there, it means not 8 minutes, it means 8 seconds, but really 8 seconds. So you can handle motion blur. So if something is moving and you have a higher amount of time to take a photo, so the photo starts here, blah, 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 and here, so you have all the camera moving on the photo. And if you choose a higher amount, it's a very short time where you capture the photo. So if the object is moving and you want to freeze it, you need a high number of shutter speed. A shorter time of amount where the curtain is open. Let's see, I move the camera and I want to take one shot here and then move away. So that's freezing. You only get this part. And the opposite, I said before, you move your object, your time of amount is longer, your curtain is longer open. So I start here, tick, and here stop. So I have this amount of images all in one frame, all in one image. So the second thing you can do with shutter speed is taking images in dark conditions, like with Aperture. When you want to take images of still images like trees, landscape or architecture, not persons, not moving objects, still images. Then you can use a tripod to reduce motion, and then you can set the shutter speed to a longer time. The curtain is longer open, more light goes through the sensor through the whole period of time, and so the sensor can collect more data. And if it's mounted on a tripod, there is no motion, and so you can, for example, photograph the Milky Way or the neighbor's swimming pool in the dark. The last thing I want to show you, to explain you, is ISO speed. What does ISO mean? ISO stands for International Standardization Organization, and it's one of the first standards which is used by hundreds of people. And ISO speed actually dates back to film cameras, where it is used to describe how sensitive a film is to the light. Of course, digital cameras don't use a film, but they use a sensor which works in a similar way. And because people were used to using ISO settings with their film cameras, it was adopted to digital cameras. So what can you do with ISO speed? With ISO, you can set the sensitivity of your sensor. If you take photos, take shots in darker conditions, you can change the aperture and the shutter speed. You can change the ISO settings. So when you don't have a tripod and can change the shutter speed, or you don't want to change the aperture, you also can change the ISO speed for dark environments. If you take a high value, the sensor is more sensitive to light. But the higher the value goes, the more noisy your pictures will be. Your first priority should be to get the fastest shutter speed you can, because a blurry photo or blurry motion is not very attractive on the photo. And the second thing is to get clear images. The clearer, the better. So the goal should be to reduce the noise in your photograph. Remember, you have aperture, you have shutter speed, and you have ISO settings. If you change one, it affects also the other two. So if you change aperture, maybe you need more shutter speed or less shutter speed or a higher value of ISO. If you change your ISO settings, maybe you want a really freezed part of emotion, you need more light from aperture or ISO. Aperture could make your images in the background blurry, sometimes too blurry, and ISO can make your material more noisy.
Thank you. It was a very informative video. I understand everything clearly. And if you have some questions or you want to comment this video, do it in the comment section, and bye.
Bye.
Das ist der Intro.
But, ich schaue da hin. Oh, fest von da hinten.
Yeah, danke.
The last thing, that's my Austrian accent. Of course.